if you could just put up some comments and let me know that you're there, that would be really great. And if you could also just let me know who you are, what you do, and what aspect. Just let me know who you are, what you do, and what aspect of birth that you are working in. Because I like to read comments and I like to chit chat with everybody. So just a formal introduction. We'll go on ahead and dive right in because we only have an hour and I have so much content to deliver to you. So jumping right in, I'm actually going to pull up my notes right next to my video so I can stay focused because I have a tendency to jump off on different rabbit holes and just talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So let's see, the chat is open. Hi, Nikki. First Brush, I got your email this morning too. I'm going to be answering that here. Yay! So let's dive right in. Let me reposition this. Oh, hi, Ashley. Hi, Jessica. Okay, so it's good to see everything is working. Please chat amongst yourselves, get to know each other. I really want this to be just a good family-like environment. We're all in this together, and we all have the same end goal, and I want to help you achieve that end goal. So if you want to pop that into the comments as well, what your goals are, that will help me with the direction of where everything goes to. Oh, hi, Jess. Newborn, you wanting to add. Perfect. Tara, this is the group chat. So where you just commented now is a group chat. So everybody will be able to see this. So it's to all attendees and panelists. So perfect. Okay. I'm going to be checking that every now and then. And otherwise I'll get distracted. So I'm going to move that out of the way for a second. So jumping right in, we are chatting about how I turned my business from a hobby into a successful, fully booked out business. So I will preface this by saying just for showing up, I want to give everybody a copy of my ebook that I've written. It's called Setting Your Soul on Fire, and it is all about finding your style and some technical skill and creativity and how you should be feeling images deep within your bones. So I'll email that out to everybody. So the number one question that I get is obviously, how did I turn this into a sustainable business? Because I am just like you. I am a mother to 5. I am tandem breastfeeding. There are 7 of us living in a 3-bedroom house. I don't have anything special. We drive a 10-year-old car, just very everyday people, nothing overly fantastic. But what is fantastic is that I was able to take my dream and my love and my passion and turn it into something that was sustainable, not just for me, but my family as well. So before I get into those dot points on how I got there, I want to tell you what led me to make that decision, what led me to that point. To deciding that I needed to up the ante and bring up, just being a hobbyist into something a lot more serious. So my husband was a truck driver, and he only worked locally, but don't let that fool you, because he was still gone anywhere between 10, 16, 20 hours a day. So he would be gone by the time the kids got up for school, and most of the time he wasn't home by the time the kids went to bed. So that meant that I was doing morning routine, school drop-off, school pickup, all the nap times and everything in between with the kids that weren't in school, keeping them occupied, not drowning yourself in the bathtub. Picking the kids up from school, and then, just the whole daily routine, homework, dinner time, doing your jobs after dinner, excuse me, and then the nighttime routine. And even though I wasn't a single mom, I really felt like it. And I'm not saying that to knock on moms who are single moms. But hubby would get home and then he would just crash, and because he was so tired. And I remember I would always get frustrated, like, just because you work doesn't mean that you don't have a part in all of this, So I'm just checking this. Oh, hi Danielle. Hi Heather. Hi Sienna, Alex. Perfect. Okay, so you're chatting amongst yourself. So I'll check that back in about 20 minutes. So, I had all of these things going on, and Matt was never home, and it left me to kind of do everything. And I was kind of shooting when I had the opportunity to shoot. So that was whenever one of my girlfriends could keep the kids, and I was doing the odd birth here and there. Part of it was because I couldn't get my bookings up. And part of it was because I wasn't really pushing my bookings because I was afraid that I would miss it because I didn't have reliable childcare. So, because of his work being, it left me very anxious. Anytime there was something on the news about a truck rolled over or jackknifed or something blew up, I just wasn't coping with having a family that was constantly growing, like every year or two. Don't judge me. And then still being able to sleep at night, in between, an hour or two at night. And so no matter how many hours my husband put into work, we were still broke. So putting in, anywhere between 10 and 16, 20 hours a day, we were still making just enough to pay our bills. And when I started to see this consistency that no matter how many times he switched jobs, no matter how many raises he took, it wasn't enough. And I didn't want him to feel as if what he was doing, this backbreaking work, was not sufficient. And so then, I started to realize that suicide rates were higher in men, and that they feel this pressure to provide, and that they feel like they are only good for what they can provide for their family. So feeling their worth outside of that role. And so that kind of led me to silently, it kind of lit a desire in me to really want to provide financially, so that way he didn't have to feel those pressures of the societal norms. So we kind of discussed a little bit about how, I've got this business, and we decided kind of from that stage that I was the only one that could determine how much money I made. So whereas he was in a position where he was capped at what he made, unless he made a drastic career change, he would always be making the same amount of money. So sure, he could change, from one company to another and take another $5,000 or $10,000. But ultimately, once he hit that cap, that was it. We weren't ever going to make any more money. So that was another deciding factor that really kind of lit a fire in me to make this work. So once we started discussing, the options of what my business was, we were just kind of dreaming, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we were booked out and I was charging this much? And, you times that times 20 births a year, and wow, that would be great supplement. Like, we were just chatting about it, but it was a dream. And that's all it ever was. It was only ever a dream. And so now that we've landed from always being broke, and then to planting the seed of having a hobby, and then that hobby becoming a dream job, is kind of where the inner work started to happen with me and with him as well. I'm incredibly lucky that he is so supportive. So what are these three things? Let's start diving into some of the things that really pushed me to turn this into six figures and be able to support my family. So when it really came down to it, I'd say for about 2 years, that conversation that we had about what my business could be was always a conversation. There was never any action behind it. And it was always a dream. And so the first thing that you can do to step up is to stop talking about it and do it. So unless you put action to what you're feeling and what you're dreaming and wishing and hoping for and manifesting, unless you put in an action and a plan to make that come to fruition, it's always going to be a dream. It will never just fall into your lap and you're like, oh, hey, look, I'm a fully booked out birth photographer. It takes work and it takes the effort and the resilience to keep going. You're going to fail. I failed and I still fail every day. But getting back up and continuing and finding the support people around you to help you keep going. If this is what you really want to do, don't give up. You find the support network. It's just like a doula, we're all in this together. So my goal is to be able to create that community where it isn't cutthroat. We're not in a position of, well, she's stealing my clients and there's not enough space for the two of us. Like, guys, there are, okay, so statistic time. In Melbourne alone, Melbourne, Australia, there are, okay, back up. In Australia, there are over 300,000 births a year. In Australia alone, 300,000. Melbourne, being a large state, being a large city, Melbourne has over 130,000 births a year. So you mean to tell me that there's probably about 50 to 75 birth photographers that are claiming, that this is what they do and that they're taking birth bookings. Might not be full time and it might not, it might just be an extra income, but it doesn't matter. So you mean to tell me that there's about 75 people in Melbourne that shoot births and you're feeling threatened, and this is scarcity. So we're operating out of scarcity. So you're feeling threatened that they're taking your clients, but when in reality, there's 130,000 more people that you can book. So this is all about getting creative and finding your brand and finding out who you are and your voice and your tone with your potential client to get their attention. There's that rabbit trail. We went off track a little bit, but let's come back to where we were. So getting that out of dream form and into concrete plan form is step number one. Step number two is legitimizing your business. And when I say legitimizing your business, I mean when I realized that I was a photographer and I was good at taking pictures and editing them and telling stories, is the second that I realized I needed to stop wasting 16 hours of my day Googling to try and figure out how to make a WordPress website. Why? Because I am not a web designer. And when I figured out that I should stop Googling for 16 hours a day how to use InDesign so I could design my graphics, that's when the energy really started to shift. So I'm not an accountant. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a web designer. I'm not a logo creator. Yes, I am creative, but there are people who are specialized and that is their job. So my theory is you're good at what you do. I'm good at what I do. So how about you do what you're good at, So please, here, Emma, create my website. I'm not good at Facebook ads. I'm not good at digital strategy. I'm not good at, email sequences and marketing, that digital aspect. So here, Rachel, you please do this for me. And then you start outsourcing and you start legitimizing. And the more you say to yourself, oh, well, I'll just shoot my web designer an email, then you start feeling like, oh, hey, my web designer, and then you start feeling like you're a legitimate business, that you are actually, your job is to create images and their job is to create websites. And so I'm not saying that you can't build your own websites. Goodness me, by all means do it. I've done it for years and I still make my own updates and everything to my website. So I'm not saying, don't do that. But for me, what would take my web designer an hour to do was taking me 8 hours to do. And that's just wasting my time. So that's 8 hours that I can't spend shooting a birth or marketing to my potential client because I'm wasting it on making websites. So that weren't converting, by the way. So there's a science to everything. So legitimizing that really lifted my spirits. It really shifted my energy. And that was when I created that, and there was an energy shift that stuff just started falling in my lap. So I'm just going to pop over here really quickly. Bree, hi. Perfect. Okay, I'm just making sure I'm not missing any questions. We're going to have a Q&A at the end as well, so get your questions ready. So the first step was stop talking and do it. The second step is legitimizing your business. And the third step for me was understanding that my mental health was not worth conforming to the societal norms. So what I mean by that is, for me, I grew up in a household where my mom stayed home, my dad went to work, she cooked, she cleaned, she took care of the kids, we went out on play dates together, and that was normal for me. So I grew up thinking that was how it was supposed to be. And I didn't know anything different because my grandmas did that, their grandmas did that. And so, yes, I was told that I needed to get a college education and I always needed to have a backup plan and, get your degree in this because that's actually going to make money. Don't get a degree in visual arts because you don't make money from that. Just all of those generational things from your own individual families that are kind of passed down and expected of you. So when I was 3 days postpartum after we had our 5th baby, I was having a lot of difficulty bonding with him, and I realized that on day 3, hello, baby blues. On day 3, I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I don't want to be a mom. I've done this 5 times over, and I don't want to be a mom. I don't want to have my life not wasted away, but in the whirlwind of thoughts that were going through my mind on day 3 as baby blues set in. I was telling myself I don't want to waste my life on being a mom and never really accomplishing anything spectacular. Now, obviously, my children are the most spectacular thing that's ever happened to me. But at that point in time, pushing through that was not an option for me. And I had to accept that it was dangerous for me and for my family and my children and my mental health and my marriage. And so when I realized that it was okay to not want to do mom duties and that I could reach out for help and that there were always people that were willing to help me, was when everything really kind of shifted for me. And then I realized that it's okay for women to want to make money. It's okay for women, not just women, but anyone in general. It's okay for you to love your job, for you to be good at it, and for you to be financially stable doing what you love. And so for so long, I think that as women, we are told that we're nurturing and we're motherly and it's our instincts and we birth babies and this is what we're designed to do, and breastfeeding and all of these things, that we kind of get lost in the societal norms identity, and we aren't focusing on what our own individual needs are. And so some women like to stay home, and that's excellent for their mental health, and I support that for however long you want to. You know, if you never want to go back to work, then hell yeah, you know, rock on, mom. And but for me, it was not the right thing at that time. And even now, when I find even now I find that when I'm doing the full-time mom thing again, that it's mentally exhausting, and I have to really prepare myself to take on all 5 kids and make sure that everything is running smoothly and working, and that they're all fed and bathed and there's not poop hanging out of their butt. And so when I understood that societal norms play a massive role in women in the workplace and how we view ourselves and how we view ourselves surrounding money, was whenever I really felt the need to step into that role and kind of switch it up. So I've always really liked going against the grain. Excuse me. And so this was an excellent opportunity for me to be able to teach my children that you can do whatever you want. Excuse me. This was an excellent opportunity for me to teach my kids that you can do whatever you want. You can, whatever you put your mind to, with some support and encouragement, you can do it. And so once I figured out all of those things and I started putting it all into place, and I started taking my 12 months and breaking that down into smaller goals, was when I really started to see change happen. And over the course of those 12 months so basically what I said was, 3 days postpartum, crazy things happened that day, which I chatted about on my other webinar. For time's sake, I won't get into that. But 3 days postpartum, lots of crazy things happened. I was emotionally high strung. I was pretty much ready to kill myself that day. And I knew that something needed to change. And so we had a chat to the husband and we both decided that now was time. And he took a risk and he quit his job. And from that point on, I realized, oh shit, I have to feed 5 kids tomorrow, and that's my responsibility. And so when you're under pressure, I always work best under pressure, hence why I was up at 1 a.m. finishing my dot points this morning. So when I'm under pressure is when I perform the most. And so I understood that until I was given an incentive to actually build a business, I was never going to do it. So my husband quit his job, and I was immediately forced to start performing. And I sat down and I took my 12-month goal, which was to make 6 figures, which is essentially to replace my husband's income. And then some, because he was not on 6 figures. And so to take that 12 months and then break that down into quarters. So my end goal was to hit 6 figures. So you take that goal and then you work backwards from there. So then I would do a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, and then another quarter. And then what do I need to do each quarter to be on track to hit that goal? And then within that quarter, what do I have to be doing monthly within that quarter to hit my goals? And then you break that down even further. And so so it might look like, oh my God, I want to make $100,000. There's no way I can do that. And then once you break that $100,000 down into $5,000 a month, and then, or whatever that goal is for you, it becomes so much easier to digest and you're not feeling quite so overwhelmed. So over the course of that 12 months, I had a lot of stuff that I needed to deal with. Some of it was money blocks, some of it was upper limits, understanding my worth as a woman and as a contributor to women's birth spaces. And I'll get into all of that in a minute, women in birth spaces. And shame surrounding myself and money. I always felt really guilty receiving money. And because I couldn't receive money, I couldn't spend money. Or that's kind of backwards. Like, because I was always operating in scarcity, will we have enough? Is this sustainable? Can we feed the kids next week? We need to stretch this $200 for another week until, Matt's payment comes in. Like, we were constantly operating in scarcity because there wasn't enough, or barely enough. And when because I didn't want to spend money, I couldn't receive money. So my relationship with money was directly affecting my ability to make money. And then that led me to understanding money and how it works and how it comes and goes, and that's okay. And that you can always make more money, and that money is not life. It is not everything. We were still incredibly broke, and we still loved each other. We still had each other. We still had our kids, we still had our family. So I don't want to emphasize that money is the fix-all, because it is not. But it sure as hell makes things easier, doesn't it? And we all want to know how we can get to that point. So once I started going through the next 12 months and really focusing on those blocks and upper limits and boundaries, like, I had basically kind of set myself up in this glass invisible box that I was never able to move out of, because I felt like that was what was expected of me. So once I started putting all of those things together and working through those things is whenever I really started to see the progress. And I went from one birth every couple of months to one birth a month, and then 2 births a month, and then 3 births a month. And then I really started to see that evolve into sustainability. And when you take those things and you pair that with vulnerability, women want to see real images of women. They want to see real stories, and they want to hear real topics. So when you start becoming vulnerable and explaining, I'm just like you guys, and you have that relatability, then people start to understand that, you're not some untouchable mother-like goddess, that you're just like them. And that's when people start to book you, when you are a tangible thing and not some, whirlwind of social media persona. When you become real and tangible and relatable is when people are drawn to you. And when you exude that confidence is when people are drawn to you. So if you want to up bookings and become sustainable, and you want to be able to have financial freedom and, contributing as a woman to your family so your husband isn't doing it, or so you can have extra cash. I mean, your scenario could be anything. It might not be like my story was. My story was to replace my husband's income and make him stay at home. But your story might just be, hey, I just want to smash these bookings out so that way we can go to Jamaica for 2 weeks, you know? And that's okay, because we don't deserve to just exist. We deserve to enjoy life in its fullest. And so, you know, this was an excellent opportunity for me to be able to take what I love so dearly and making it into something that was working for us and our family financially. So if you have any questions, I really want you to kind of pop them in. We'll go into a Q&A here in a little bit. So I don't see any questions for me. Perfect. So I just, I want you to not focus on your losses and what you failed at. And I want you to begin to change your mindset into focusing to what you've done right and what your wins are. And for some of us, our wins are getting out of bed. And I think that we need to celebrate that. And from there, when you start seeing those little things that you didn't think were significant and you start noticing them, you realize just how significant they really are. And so I really want you to focus on your triumphs and then going from triumph to triumph and not just sitting at that one in that one spot, because when you sit for too long, you go stagnant and you kind of start to stink. So it's really important to remember that we're going from, you know, one win to the next win to the next win, and we're always planning that next win. So I really want to kind of move into, you know, how can we do that? So as many of you know, I have got this amazing online course that I have created. And if you're really, really keen to want to dive into those money blocks and vulnerabilities and becoming, you know, more transparent, I really want to be able to give that to you and help you achieve those things. And, you know, being able to contribute financially to your family. So the e-course is called Exposing Birth Photography. You see what I did there? Yeah. The e-course is called Exposing Birth Photography. And I created this because I wanted people to understand that technical skill is a necessity, but it is not everything. And that there is a lot of emotional you know, blocks and things that we need to get through as well, and understanding women in the birth space and understanding how that is different for every woman. And so the course is 12 months. It is very intensive, but it is something that needed to happen. And so over those 12 months is basically what is going into this e-course. So the 12-month journey that I went on from, you know, making 16 to 116,000 is really going to be what this is based off of. And the encounters that I experienced with other birth photographers along the way, and how we can begin to change the societal views of birth, and how images are healing women, how images are telling stories, and how images are helping women to put their stories together. And that is important, and it's crucial, and it's teaching about birth. We've just had Instagram and Facebook lift the community policy on graphic images in birth. And that is an incredible win for the birth industry, because it really is educational. When I share images, I want women to look at it and go, oh, she's standing up and she's got a baby hanging out of her vagina. I didn't know you could do that. And so I want these images to prompt women to then go to their care provider and say, hey, I saw this crazy bitch's picture on Instagram and she was standing up. Can I birth standing up? And so that's, you know, what the goal is to make birth normal in families and to eliminate fear and to, you know, not have our children afraid and not passing on this generational thing of funk and awkwardness surrounding birth. So the other incredible news is that the Australian College of Midwives will be accrediting this course, which is phenomenal. So that means that if you are a midwife, you will receive continuing professional development points for completing the course. And so that is really elevating the standard of what birth photography is and validating that what we do is an actual job and validating that that we are an industry. We are not some super, super niche genre of photography, but there is a high demand, and this is just validating that. So I've got some incredible contributors that will be coming in and teaching some modules, not all of them. I'll be doing most of the teaching, but Angela Gallo is going to come in, and Catherine Eden and Libby Maloney, and we're going to be chatting about loss and how to navigate the space and, you know, how to interact with birth workers and ensuring that we're all being respected and that all of that vulnerability that we're feeling in that space is being reciprocated with each other, and that it's a safe space for the mother to be able to birth in. So what I want to open this up for Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Oh no, can you not hear? Can everyone hear me? You can hear, perfect. Okay, I'm not sure why some people can't hear me. Oh goodness. How to start your portfolio. Okay, that's a great question. So when I started, I'm not against people doing free work. I'm not against people doing cheap work. I think that we are all in our own individual spaces and our own individual journeys and pathways to get where we need to be, and we all have to start somewhere. So when I started to build my portfolio, I actually offered my friend actually asked me to take pictures of her birth, and that's kind of what got me into it. I fell in love with it after I photographed her birth, and so I offered to do another free birth, a birth for free. And then after that, I started limiting myself. So, you know, I did, I think I did 5 free births at first. And then once those births were taken, those 5 free, then I said I upped it to $250. And then I took 5 at $250 or 3 at $250. And then I upped it to $500. And then I took 3 at $500. And then I upped it to $750. And I just kind of kept upping it a little bit. And obviously the more births that I shot, the more I had for a portfolio. So when you're on the lower end of the scale, what I always do is in exchange for inexpensive birth photography, they have to sign a model release, which gives me permission to share whatever I want. So obviously I give them the option to go back and renege on that. But if they do, then they would then be required to pay full price. Because they're not eligible for the inexpensive birth. So, oh, Alana, your sound's gone too. What is going on? How to book births when they're so unpredictable. So I don't actually look at estimated due dates. I only look at the month. And I'll book between 3 and 4 a month. And I always have a backup. I don't usually need to use my backup, but I have one just in case. So 3 to 4 months is what I book. And typically they never really they overlap. Sometimes you might find that one starts while another mom is finishing and having her baby, but I haven't really had any issues. And if you do have that odd time where you've got 2 moms in labor at the same time, you just ring your backup. So you have to make sure that you have a good, reliable backup. How many births? Jess, I answered that. And do you have a backup? I answered that. I answered all this before I saw your question. How do you book those clients, as in approach them for advertising? How do you book clients? Okay. So I am obviously a bit of an extrovert. So if I see a pregnant mama in the shops, I won't hesitate to go and hand her my card. I won't say anything. Hey, I'm Lacey. You obviously make sure that they're obviously pregnant before approaching them. And I just go up to them and say, hey, look, I'm Lacey. Nice to meet you. I live in the area. I saw your gorgeous bump, and I just wanted to hand you my card. And just hand it to them. And you'll find, and I'll chat about this in the e-course as well, in a lot of depth, that when we're branding and when we're marketing, it's important to know our target market and go where they are. And so that's how come I'm pretty comfortable doing that, because I know wherever I am, they're probably there too. How do I prepare for birthing sessions? This is a really good question. So when I have my clients fill out a questionnaire and a contract, and that questionnaire is kind of like my quick cheat sheet. So it's got all of their information that I need to know at a quick glance. So it's got their name, their partner's name, if they have a doula, who their care provider is, their home address. Even if they're not birthing at home, I always want their home address. Why? Because if babies come really, really, really quickly and they're in transit to the hospital and they don't make it, I want to be able to trace their steps from home to see if I can't catch them on the side of the road. So it's those little bitty things that we need to be thinking about. It's tiny, tiny details, but it's important to know. And also when I'm preparing for shooting a birth, I always like to view the space that I'm shooting in. So if it's at their home before they have the baby, I always go to their home and I always look at the space. So that way I can kind of start, preparing and looking and excuse me, and anticipating my next move. So if I hear mom grunting, then I know, oh, okay, she's probably going to have her baby soon. So I need to be looking around and figuring out where I can stand inside the room. And you don't want to do that when she's pushing a baby out. You should already know your space and what your surroundings are. So shooting a birth is not, yes, it's documentary, but it is not just walking into a dark room and hoping that you get something. There is a lot of preparation that goes into that, and I go into that far more in depth in the e-course. Do you need a doula course to get started? To get started as a birth photographer, Fran, what do you mean by that? Do you have a travel distance from hospital homes? No, you do not need to be a doula to be a birth photographer, and vice versa. You do not need to be a birth photographer to be a doula. I am a doula, and I chose to become a doula so that way my clients understood that I was not a random who picked up a camera and just started shooting vaginas, that I actually had a vested interest in what I was doing. So have a travel distance from hospitals and homes? I do. So I cut off at an hour travel time. So basically, I tell my clients I'm comfortable to travel to them within an hour confidently and make it to their birth. That doesn't mean that I will actually make it if mom has baby super quick. You can't do anything about that. But anything outside of that hour, I will happily travel to. But they understand that they are taking a risk of me not making it in a normal um, length physiological birth. The chances of me making it drop. I still have moms hire me. I've traveled as far as 2 hours in the car to attend a birth. She was adamant that I would make it. I made it. And so it's really up to you. Like, ultimately, the sky's the limit with your boundaries and what you're comfortable with taking and doing and pricing in your business. Is there a big difference photographing natural births and C-sections? Yes and no. Obviously, the surrounding is a little bit different. So we're still working really, really hard on getting normal, regular entry into the theater and into the OR in America, it's called. So we're still working really hard to get access to theater. But as far as it being the same, it's the same because you still need to hold space for the mother, and you still need to understand that there still needs to be, consent and understanding, and making sure that the mom is okay with what's happening, and this is doula hack going on, and how all of that plays a role into her healing and understanding of her birth. And the difference is obviously gaining entry into theater and knowing protocol in theater. So one of the quickest ways to get thrown out is by, getting too close to the mom and crossing there's a sterile area in theater, and you can't cross that. And so knowing where you can stand and where you can't stand, and just overall asking the doctors, do you mind if I do this? And they'll tell you, don't be afraid to ask. So we're all a part of mom's team, and that's what's important. And that's why I'm so excited that the ACM will be accrediting this, is because it's bringing us all together for the mother's sake and not for us. So, we're understanding now that continuity of care is crucial to the well-being of mother and baby and their outcomes. So have I ever had to use a flash or only natural light and high ISO? So I tell my clients that I always use natural light where possible. And if there is no light, then I will try to make light. But if I can't make light, then I will be putting a flash on. So my theory, flash and no flash in the birth space, is really a controversial subject. And that's something that only you can determine what is right for your particular target market. Mine don't mind flash. So I just tell them, look, you're paying a premium price for birth photography. I want to make sure that you're getting premium products and premium images. So I've never had a woman ask me to remove my flash. I give them that option, but I make sure that they understand that their images will be grainy and possibly have some motion blur in them. So it just depends. It depends on the lighting situation and what's going on. How do you juggle breastfeeding and being away from your baby? Okay, this is another, I'm so glad you asked this. So when I decided to, when my husband and I decided, I was going to say something cheeky and be like, when I bullied my husband into quitting, but that's not the case. I didn't. And when we decided that it was best for him to quit, my husband became me and was stay-at-home dad, which obviously made attending births much easier. And with breastfeeding, because we were so close postpartum, because I was so freshly postpartum, I was 3 days postpartum. My first birth that I attended was 10 days postpartum. And I just told my client that wanted to book me, I said, hey, look, I'm going to have a baby with me. So if you're cool with that, I'm going to bring my baby. And the beautiful thing is that we're all mothers and we all understand. And so I've never had a mom tell me that I couldn't bring my baby to her birth. So once they got to about, 6 months, I stopped bringing them with me. My milk had regulated out and I was able to go for longer periods of time without breastfeeding. And in that case, if there was an emergency where I needed to breastfeed and I couldn't pump or whatever, I would just have somebody bring me my baby and I would step out and I'd breastfeed him, hand him back, and off he went. So it's definitely possible. What stage of labor do you leave home to go to at the birth? As soon as they go into labor or when they've reached a certain stage? Jess, what I do there, I tell my clients that I want 2 phone calls. I want one phone call when they think they're in labor, and then I want another phone call when they're heading to the hospital or they're calling their midwife to their home to attend their home. So my theory is, if it's intense enough for you to go to the hospital for your place of birth, or if it's intense enough that you want your midwife home with you, then I should probably be there too. Because most of my clients don't have internal exams, so it's really difficult to say, I'll attend when you're, 6 centimeters. And I find that by the time they're 6 centimeters and you leave your house, chances are you won't make it anyway, because there's such a small window. So, yeah, I go by that. 2 phone calls, once when you think you're in labor, and then once when you call your team, because I am your team, Have you ever had any trouble with midwives or staff not wanting you there and not having the images because they're in the background? Okay. Yes, I have had midwives that do not want me there. And that is another reason why I'm creating this course, because I want there to be etiquette that people understand. And this is why I've paired up with the Australian College of Midwives as well here in Australia, because I want for there to be harmony in the birth space. And I want for midwives to understand that we're not there to wait to take a picture of them stuffing up, and, that we're generally there for the mother and for her journey, and to deliver something that can help put such a surreal experience into something tangible. So, yes, I have had midwives and obstetricians and anesthetists and everybody that doesn't want me there. So what I do in those situations is I write a letter on a Lacey Barrett photography letterhead, and I just tell them, look, this is what I do. This is where I've come from. This is my website. Please check me out. If you would like to speak to any of my past clients or any of the other midwives whom I have worked with, please feel free to contact them. And I give them their names and phone numbers. And I've never been declined entry into a birth space. So, I mean, I lie. I was kicked out of a birth once, but that's a story for another day. How many images do I deliver? So I deliver anywhere between 150 upwards. It just depends on their story and what happens. I find that home births typically tend to have more images delivered, just because there's more things to photograph and more surroundings than what hospitals are. It's just the one room. And it depends on how many people is there. Obviously, the more people, the more pictures I'll be taking. What's the price range when highly experienced? That's going to be different for everybody. I don't necessarily equate experience to price. I don't think that I don't think that you need to have shot 200 births to be charging $3,000. I think that you can come straight into this industry and start charging that. It's all about your trust that you build with your client that is going to enable you to charge that. Before you do that, no, I don't. Georgia, I make my client do all of that. I tell them that that's their responsibility. And in my contract, I say that if I'm denied entry, then I can't do anything and that there's no refunds, because that's their responsibility to make sure that that I get into their birth space. But like I said, I've never had that happen. And I think because I've been photographing for so long and at all of the same hospitals that people are pretty aware of who I am. So excellent, guys. Well, I'm just trying to see if I missed any. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So I think that's all of the questions. I've got 4 minutes, and I had a couple of questions come through on email. So I want to pull that up and read that to you. I'm trying to think of where I don't even know where it's gone. Okay, I'll pull it up on the computer. So I had a couple of things come through. So how do you juggle children at home and being on call? I think I kind of chatted about that. So for us, we decided to have my husband stay home, but there are actually nanny services in Australia that you can get at the drop of a hat. I'll actually drop that website in an email for you if you're in Australia, and maybe if you're in the States or another country, you could maybe see if they have an equivalent. How do you book clients? I think I chatted about that as well, and avoid overlapping due dates. Do you meet with hospitals locally? I always think it's a good idea if you could get a tour of the hospital and introduce yourself to the staff, that will never hurt anything. But no, I don't generally go in and book those kinds of things. However, I think if you're just establishing, I cannot talk today. I think if you're just establishing yourself as a birth photographer, that is an excellent way to network and get your foot in the door. And I think a lot of these have, how do you build your portfolio? I've answered those as well. And another question was, Flash. I chatted about Flash as well. I don't use Flash in C-sections. There's plenty enough ambient light there. So, okay. Well, on that note, I am going to leave you. Guys, if you still have questions, I would really love it if you could pop it into an email and send it to me so I can respond back to you. I want to answer every single question. So if I missed your question, please put it in an email to me. We're running out of time.